Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Always Believer. Today we have a super special guest who I'm so utterly excited, and I'm always excited for all my guests, as you already know by now. So I think every week I'm telling you the same thing, but it's true. I love the people I talk to. So, without further ado, we have Jeannette Kaplun. Hi!
Hi, and I am so thrilled and so honored to be here with you
Oh,
and with your amazing community. It's just so special. It is great.
I am so thankful you're here that we like got connected by Lorraine. So Lorraine, if you don't know who she is, I'll tag her down below. She was with us twice our first season for a regular Go to Fly episode, telling her story, much like we're going to do today, and for Mother's Day, much like you were on Mother's Day as well. So yeah, Lorraine hooked us up, and ever since then, you and me were like, we got each other.
Yeah, we
We
got
know.
each other. We're connected, and now we're going to be friends for life. You're
Exactly.
stuck
Oh,
with
it's
me.
so exciting. Oh my God. I love being stuck with people like you, believe me. I'm like, yes. It's like, it's the good vibes. And we talked a little bit before recording, as always, as I usually do. And like, we vented and we did the struggles and we talked about this, but we talked about positive stuff. And I'm like, that's what life is about. It's like an easy flow. That's what it should
That's
be
how it's
like.
supposed to be.
Exactly, right? So before we continue to the million and one questions, tell us a little bit about yourself so our audience
Ooh.
knows.
Well, I'm going to start from the beginning just because it's easier. So, my parents are from Chile. And when my dad was studying his MBA in El Paso, Texas, I was born. So, that's why I'm a Texan. And then my parents decided to move back to Chile when I was 7. So, I grew up in Chile, in Santiago de Chile. So, I'm fully bilingual. I studied journalism and worked in TV news. And then I decided to move back to the States and I studied my master's, which I never finished because I never completed my thesis. And I started working. I started working first in PR for a year, and then I hosted a tech show for the Discovery Channel called Vida en Línea. And this was in the 90s. So we're going way back when. And during the middle of that technology show, I saw the potential of the internet. And my husband and I decided to co-found a tech company called Todo Bebé, which means all things baby, as everybody knows. And that was 99. And Todo Bebé grew. I became the editor in chief, thinking that, okay, they'll hire somebody once they raise capital. And I fell in love. I fell in love with the internet. I didn't even know that what I was doing was blogging, but Todo Bebé grew into events, TV show, radio, products, apps. And so I oversaw all the content. I hosted the TV shows on Univision and Telemundo. And I even wrote a book with HarperCollins for baby's first year. Todo bebé, todo lo que necesitas saber para el primer año de tu bebé. But in 2012, the company started taking a different direction. And I realized I wanted to help a larger audience and an audience that was bilingual, that spoke not only Spanish, but also English, and that not necessarily had kids. I wanted to help women. I wanted to inspire women. I wanted to envision what it really means to be a woman in today's world, not only limited by whether you have kids or not, whether you are working outside of the home or not. So I just wanted something for modern Latinas, not the traditional view of who is a Latina, because some Latinas speak Spanish, others don't. Some speak English, some don't. And it's fine. We are all Latina enough. And that was 2012. I founded Hispana Global. And well, millions of views later, of a community that keeps growing. The company's still here. People thought I was absolutely crazy for walking away from Todo Bebé, but it was time. And they told me the market is oversaturated. Why are you creating another website for women? I'm like, because there's nothing like Hispana Global. And thank goodness I'm still here. But it's thanks to my community. If not, there's no way I would be able to do the things that I do. So that's just the executive summary, because in between I've hosted other shows. I've been invited to write for other publications. And I just love building bridges and defying stereotypes of who a Latina is, what a woman can and cannot do, and also provide some inspiration, I hope, to people who might not be really encouraged to follow their dreams. I want to encourage them to follow their dreams, but also make informed decisions, because you can have this ideal vision of what being an entrepreneur is. Being an entrepreneur is extremely difficult, and it's not for everybody. And I feel that sometimes the society glorifies what it means to be an entrepreneur, and it's not even an option for many people. Not only financially, but also due to your personality. You have to be willing to take on certain risks that not everybody is equipped to do. But I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur and see where I'm at today. So it's just about adapting and learning about how to change, not your essence, but how to change maybe the way that you can provide information or services or help others. That's what for me has been absolutely key.
Well, first of all, congratulations with everything you've done, because I know it's definitely been like a huge game changer. The moment that I discovered you, once again, thanks to Lorraine, and I started researching everything you did, and I'm like, these things really, because I love kids. I was a teacher for 10 plus years. I was an au pair. I was au pair for many years as well, but I was a foster mom for many years. So anything kid related is very much me. I don't have kids just yet. That's life, part of life right now. But when I read Todo Bebé and things like that, I'm like, oh my God, these things really sound familiar. So it's really crazy how following those dreams can lead you to meet people that you're like, oh my God, like I know you from certain things, or like that kind of makes sense, and that connection and things like that. So you definitely go above and beyond without a doubt. So like congratulations with everything that you've done and that
Thank
you're
you.
doing, because it's so important to have that voice and that presence without a doubt. I
Crazy. So when I look back, it's so insane to just see how many different things I've done or tried, but it's been so much fun.
Of course, I think, well, I know I definitely agree with the two statements that you said, that community is everything, because it doesn't matter how big or small it is. The fact that, I have like what we call here like team flyer, day in, day out, the comments, the DMs, the way that they collaborate, the way that they want to be on the show, and a million other things in between. It's just like, that's just wonderful, because it's what we love to do, and spread these stories and say, hey, it is possible. Like, it's a struggle. It's going to be difficult, but it is possible, of course. And then the whole Be a Latina. I mean, obviously, I created The Always Believer many moons ago, and a whole different journey of mine, just as kind of a whim when I moved to Barcelona from like Galicia, from like a different part of Spain, basically. And and I always wanted to create, I always wanted to do something that was different. I wanted to express myself. My biggest intention with Always Believer, the blog version of it and now the podcast version of it, is not feeling alone. I had a really difficult childhood, which many of you already know, and teenagehood. And I'm like, there has to be a way to get the message out there that we're not alone. Let me go share my experience and let's take it from there. And then through studying, through moving, through a million adaptations, because I do adapt very well, like you were saying, we're here today, which is really, really great and insane and wonderful that I'm able to share these experiences as well. So that's the Always Believer. But going back to what you said with Latina, that's how I created the Latina, literally with a T, like spilling the T, the Latina podcast, and everything that's going behind the scenes right there currently. Because, like you said, like we're represented in different million ways. And even if there are a million other podcasts or shows or pages, you're like, you have your own unique voice, and the more the better at the end of the day, right?
Totally. And that's the thing that I don't get about people sometimes saying, oh, how are you going to try this? It's already been done. Well, you know what? Almost everything has been done. So why not give it your unique twist? There's only one of you, right?
Exactly.
So just find what makes you unique and run with it. Even it's being vulnerable, like the stories that you share about your childhood. That's what connects us, what we feel, what we survived, what we learned. It's not only the failure or how many times you fall down in life, it's how you got up. Because sometimes when you are down on the floor, what you need to hear is how somebody else struggled and also got up. So you feel, you know what, I got this. I can do hard things. I, I can try at least. There's hope. Because I think the biggest problem that we face is not hunger, it's not homelessness, it's not even fear, is when we lose hope. Once you lose hope, there's nothing really you can do. And that's why I feel that mental health is so important, because we have to take care of not only our dreams, but that tiny flame inside of us that gives us hope, because that is what carries you through the darkest moments in your life.
It really, utterly is. That's why the name, the Always Believer. I mean, I always said always believe since I was a little kid. That's like the first memory I have. Like, always believe there's something better out there for me, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Always believe that we're going to get out of the situation into something completely better. And it's that belief system that I've had day in, day out. So anyone who met me since I was a kid, or just in general, they're like, you always said this. Hence the name was so like obvious for me, of course, in this particular case to say. And it's like, the Always Believer, because it's not only me, it's not only Ariadna, it's all of us, because you're also the Always Believer. And obviously our community is not called the Believers because for obvious reasons. But when I created the movement Go to Fly, the team flyer to go fly and things like that. So yes, completely and utterly agree.
Yeah, but sometimes society doesn't help keep that
I
hope
don't
alive.
think...
So that's why we need to
I...
figure out ways in which we can keep our soul, our spirit alive, despite whatever cards are handed to you.
Completely and utterly agree once again. I think it's we keep saying the world's stronger, at least I do right now currently. It's challenging, of course, to still always be upbeat. And it's not like my friends know, my people know. I mean, I'm very, very honest always online as well. It's like, I'm not always happy, of course. I mean, I'm a human being. But what we do have is that, we get back up every single time, and we go back at it, because if you don't, then what's the point of it all? Basically.
Exactly. And it's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel sad. But I learned very early on that trying to negate the side of me that feels too much was only causing me harm.
Mm-hmm.
And now I embrace all the feelings, and I'm like I'm not always happy. I'm not always smiling, but I'm always trying to smile. I'm always trying to find something to feel grateful for. And just knowing that the way that you get through difficult things in life is second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. So you take it one day at a time. And if that's not enough, then it's an hour at a time. And then it's a minute at a time. And sometimes even a second of remembering to breathe, right? So I just feel that we really have to never lose focus of that. And if you can find one thing that makes you smile, then that provides you some relief during difficult times. And then it gets better. Then
it does. It does.
Start like figuring out ways to smile more, laugh. Even sometimes we have a weird sense of humor, right? Humor can carry you through very sad things, but we can laugh about it. I don't know if you ever saw Roberto Benigni's La Vita Bella, Life is Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's been a while.
It's been a while, I know, I'm aging myself, but it's a beautiful movie for anybody who has not seen it, about a terrible moment in our history about the Holocaust in Italy, and how a father creates this narrative for his child so that his son doesn't lose the joy of living. And it's a very simplistic way of defining it, but it's all in how we approach things in life, regardless of how terrible, how sad, how unfair they might be.
Couldn't say it better myself, without a doubt. One of the key words when I was researching more about you that you say a lot that I personally love was evolution. And I'm like, evolution is key, balance is key. I say that a lot as well. And I feel like all the little the conversation that we've had till now is also talking about that evolution. Would you add anything more?
Well, I think that for some reason we think that we need to stay the same, right, from the moment that we're born, and that is so absurd. It's like some people in their relationships with others, they're like, but you change. And I'm like, why wouldn't we change? Circumstances change. We get a new skill set every day. With each challenge, we acquire a new skill set that we can incorporate in our toolbox. So it's just like mind-boggling to me that it took me a while to actually embrace change, and that change brings opportunity. We have to let go of the fear of the uncertainty, right? I know it's really hard. I know that I'm oversimplifying things, but once you understand that it's in our nature and in our best interest to evolve, then whatever new chapter happens and whatever new path you embark on, it loses a little bit of that uncertainty because you know that you'll face it. And if you don't master it, then there's other ways. You can always find a different road, but there's always a way. And sometimes if we don't allow ourselves to evolve, to change, to adapt, for me, the key is adaptation to everything. Then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're going to suffer unnecessarily. And there's always enough suffering. So why make things even harder on you? Don't resist change. Just go with the flow, learn to navigate it. And that way, I think life becomes much easier.
It
And you
really
become
does.
much more resilient.
You really, really do. I feel like once again, balance is key for me and evolution is key because I'm not the same person I was this morning. It's like one of those Alice in Wonderland's quotes. It's like I was at least 7 people or thought 7 things, before breakfast. And it's true. And I love that about myself and about people who do that, of course, all the time, because like, why would you want to stay the same that you were 5 years ago? Much like you said, the situation is completely different. I mean, not even going 5 years ago, a year ago with the pandemic going on. I mean, you're a whole different person. I think all of us are, of course.
I'm a whole different person, even like from 10 days ago.
Yeah.
Because for me, the way that I approached COVID changed drastically the day that my son called me to tell me that he was positive. He tested positive while he was away at college, and he had just gone back from Miami. And I hadn't even realized how much it rattled me and how much it affected me until I really started processing it once he left isolation, once I knew for sure that he was fine. And I realized how scared I was. And I'm a person who is very optimistic in general, who's very knowledgeable because I have access to a lot of information, and I read a lot, and I read a lot of medical journals, and I have access to amazing doctors if I want to interview them. But once it hit home, I totally saw how much even a mild case of COVID in my family totally changed my perspective.
It definitely shook us up. I'm happy to know he's okay. I definitely read your blog post because you did write about it, which is good. Which is good in the sense of like sharing that experience because we've all known someone or gone through it or at this point or eight. When it hit home for me too as well. So like when it hits home, you're just like, okay, this is okay. Okay. Let's just take it from one day at a time.
Yeah, it's just that I think that in my case, unfortunately, we've also experienced loss in the sense that one of my dad's closest friends passed away a month ago due to COVID. I have an aunt who is on a ventilator in Chile right now. But it was different this time because I couldn't do anything for my son aside from maybe provide him a glimpse of what life there was outside of the room in which he was stuck in for 11 days. And that was my mission, right? And I had never thought that that would be my mission. Always as a caregiver, you envision yourself, okay, I'll feed him, I'll control his temperature, I'll make sure that his oxygen level is fine. It had never occurred to me that by him being isolated in a special dorm, miles away from home, that I would be in charge of keeping his spirits up, protecting his mental health, giving him hope, but also entertaining him with glimpses of our everyday life, and allowing him to feel that even though he was isolated from the world, he wasn't disconnected, that he was still, if he wanted, he was still part of dinner. We had dinner together. He could still watch the dog make all his silly tricks via FaceTime, and even see the regular craziness of our household. So, but you're right. I mean, once it hits home, and once it touches you so close, you can't see things the same way, right?
You really
and
can't.
it happens with everything, not only with COVID. We can know everything about a subject matter, but when you go through it, it gives you a very different perspective.
Mm-hmm. How's your son now? I mean, I know we'll.
He's doing great.
Okay.
Thank goodness he's doing great. He learned a lot about himself in the process. He even wrote a blog post for me, and which I proudly published, and I didn't have to edit much. So I was very proud. I told him he wants to be an engineer, but I told him that if he ever wants to switch to journalism, I will fully support his decision.
Of course. I'm so happy that not only he's safe, of course, and healthy, but also that it just made him think and made him grow and evolve. That's the key word of what we were talking
Evolution,
about.
again.
It's
right?
evolution every single day and every single step of the way. And it's just much like you were saying, I hope that more people are just more open to it in general. There's a lot of, communities who are more close-minded to like stay the same and like typical traditions. Oh, this is like what we've always done. It's like, well, try something different. You don't know what you're missing. Instead of going to the same route to work, try 3 streets away. You're still going to get to the, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, or try a different kind of milk in your coffee.
Exactly.
Or maybe try it without milk. You might find that you like it or not, but at least try. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway, right? That we need to give ourselves and others permission to try something new, to question why things have always been done in a certain way. I still remember when we were trying to raise capital for Todo Bebé, people were like, well, it's never been done because there's no market. I'm like, have you seen the census? Who's really having more babies? Latinos. I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. But that's how people are trained to think, right? It's like things have always been done a certain way, so that's why we should keep it. Well, maybe it is the best way, but why don't we question whether there are other ways, whether there are other routes to work, right? Let's question things, and let's not take it as an attack or a criticism, because what I think happens, especially between different generations, is that when somebody questions why things have always been done in a certain way, the person who has been doing things that certain way feels attacked or criticized, and they become defensive. Instead of opening their mind to new possibilities, they're like, no, this is the way that we do it, and we're going to do it that way. And they get very, very, even sometimes aggressive and protective, because they're scared of invalidating the decisions and the paths that they have been taking. But once you lose that, it's not a personal attack. It's just maybe opening your eyes and seeing there might be an alternative. There might be a more efficient choice, or a happier choice, or a better choice. Maybe not, but let's try. Let's figure it out.
Exactly. I completely agree. I see it a lot with twin generations, like you said, and just different cultures. I mean, that's actually my next point of conversation about cultures, because you're part from USA, you're part from Chile. You lived in a bilingual house as well. Not only did you grow up bilingual, but your kids are also bilingual. So I want to touch into all that because it's such an interesting contrast when you put it all together, and how to make it all work, of course, at the end of the day.
It's just, I don't know anything different, to be quite honest with you, right?
Preach.
Because I mean, I don't even know what it's not to be multicultural, what it's not like not bilingual. I mean, just to even add more fuel to the fire, right? To more ingredients to this melting pot. My parents are from Chile, but their grandparents were from different parts of Europe. On my father's side, from Ukraine and Romania. On my mother's side, from what now probably is Poland and also Ukraine, but different parts of Ukraine. So I have family who used to be in Kiev, some in Odessa. They ended up in Argentina, then they crossed over to Chile, and then my parents were born, and then they moved to the States, and my brother and I were born in El Paso, then we moved to Miami. And so for me, it's like, I don't know anything different, right? My husband is Peruvian, but he came to study in college here in Miami. His entire family ended up moving to Miami, and we all speak Spanish, but different kinds of Spanish. And there's so much diversity in the Hispanic community. So maybe in Texas, people didn't speak Spanish as much as they speak here in Miami. In Miami, everybody speaks Spanish. So for my children to be raised in a bilingual household, it's not strange. Like their classmates also spoke English and Spanish, some better, some worse, but they all understood it, right? And some people weren't confident enough to speak it. And we're also Jewish, which also is mind-boggling for a lot of people. They're like, all Latinos are Catholic. I'm like, no.
No.
Oh, they're all Christians. I'm like, no, because yes, there are a lot of evangelical friends that I have, and there are a lot of Catholic friends, but there's a tiny minority that are not Christian at all. And I am Jewish. You can't be Jewish. I'm Jewish. Are you
like,
Jewish
excuse me?
because you married a Jew? And I'm like, no, I'm like, my whole family is Jewish. And they're like, I don't understand. And I'm like, so then I started like explaining different things. And that's why I always love building bridges, because you don't know what you don't know until you're exposed to it. And if we don't interact with other people, and if we don't let go of all our preconceived notions in our interactions with other people, like in Peru, there's so many Chinese Peruvians, there's so many Japanese Peruvians,
You
right?
read my mind, literally.
And I'm like, even Peruvian culture, like what you envision is a Peruvian has nothing to do with reality. There's so much diversity in Peru, and in Chile now there's diversity. There wasn't that much diversity in the past, but it's still a melting pot of different European cultures. So you have a lot of Italians, a lot of Germans, you have people from all over, aside from the Mapuches who were there before all the Spaniards came, right? So it's just so interesting for me how close-minded people are. And then, but you can't be a Latina and be blonde. And I'm like, well, I've always been blonde. Or it's like, it's just, oh, but your kids have light eyes, so they're not Latino enough. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, your son's name is Michael. I'm like, yeah, but he not only speaks perfect Spanish, he writes perfect Spanish as well. So don't be fooled by his name, by his blue eyes, and by his English.
Exactly.
He's very Latino. He loves soccer, which we call football.
Fútbol, claro que sí.
He loves ceviche. He knows all the bad words in Chilean slang and in Peruvian slang, plus all the Venezuelan and Colombian slang that he's been exposed to, and the Cuban slang as well, thanks to Miami. So for me, I can't even imagine not raising my kids multicultural. But aside from being multicultural, from being tolerant of other cultures, which is why I miss traveling so much. I not only travel for work, but traveling has always been my passion, because my parents used to travel with me, and they would expose me to different cultures, different countries, different languages, different foods, different smells. So that way my mind could be outside of what the typical Chilean mind used to be, right? Chile is a very long and isolated country in the bottom of South America. But by traveling, I was able to see the potential of different cultures, the richness of the world, and that we're all connected because we're human beings. There's humanity across different cultures, religions, even when there is no religion, because many people don't have a religion. And that's fine too. That doesn't make them better or worse. I don't know why we expect that people that are like us are better than other people, when those who are the most different from us are our biggest teachers. There's so much that we need to learn. And that's why I love traveling, but I also love traveling with my kids, because I also want to give them that gift of embracing the world, all the diversity, and realizing that there's so much to be learned. And I love that. I love building bridges. I love meeting new people. I love meeting new cultures and realizing how little we know in general.
I adore that statement because it's so true. I mean, I have my own set of story, of course, but I was trying to say it's like, but it's literally the same. It's completely different, but it's literally the same. It's, my mom is Venezuelan, my dad's Ecuadorian. They lived in Venezuela. We moved to Miami because, of course, we did. And then from there, life just took me to Europe basically at a very young age. The first time I moved to Europe, I was 9. And the second time I was 14. And in Europe, it was mainly Spain. So my Spanish is like, you take it or you leave it. You got to take it if you talk to me in Spanish. Because my team flyer already knows if they're bilingual and they hear me in Spanish. But it's hilarious because I have like some Venezuelan words, I have some Venezuelan accent, but at the same time I have a lot of Spanish accent and like vocabulary. So it's a nice little mix. And when we lived in Spain, at my youngest age, at 17, 18, I started traveling Europe and I started seeing Poland and Ukraine and Czech Republic and Hungary and all these different countries that I was like, this is freaking amazing because it's so different and wonderful and unique at the same time. So much like you, I don't know anything different because I was always raised like this and in a multicultural home, in the sense of we grew up in Miami and people are like, of course you know Spanish. And I'm like, well, you're a kid, you go to elementary school, you're going to speak English. Of course. The reason I know Spanish is my mom made sure in the household we spoke Spanish, and there you go. And then moving to Spain was pretty easy because I already knew Spanish. So it's not like I had to learn the whole language by any means, which is really, really nice. So kind of like us, like we were saying, it's kind of like your story, but completely different. But at the same time, it's just putting all these pieces together. Luckily enough, and weirdly enough, my husband's from the States. Luckily enough, he's a world traveler. He's lived in South Korea, he's lived in Spain, he's lived in different places around the world, and he's always had the passion to travel. So that's a big part of it, of course. He loves learning about different cultures and languages and things like that. So even though right now the States is kind of our like the next step from Europe to here, we're excited to go back to Europe. We're excited to go back to Asia. Like we just want to make sure that we continue traveling, much like you. And then whenever we have kids as well, like that's our number one priority. Because
I can't wait to see like where you'll end up visiting and where you'll end up exploring. So much to explore.
We have some family members who have always stayed in the same place all their lives, so they see us as like super adventurous. And I'm like, I know we can pick up a car and just travel wherever, we're very spontaneous. But I'm like, it's just so easy to hop on a plane. I mean, COVID pending, blah 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 blah, just in general. You know what I mean?
This is just a pause. This is
exactly.
just a pause. It's temporary.
Exactly. It's so easy to hop on a plane and just like go visit, any part of Europe, but also Latin America and whenever. So anytime we talk to them, it's like, we just can't wait to go back to Asia. Like we really want to go discover Japan a lot more. I want to visit South Korea because he's been talking about it for years by now. So it's like, I want to go see it, so on and so forth. So I yes, I love that. I really do. And I think there is something so important for our community of Latinas and Latin people to understand the beauty of that and like be proud of being multicultural, of being bilingual, of knowing that, like you said, with religion. I mean, I'm not really religious. I mean, people ask me because of the name. I'm like, oh, I'm like, no, it's nothing about like not Christian out of faith. It's just regular faith, like that you need the magic you need every day to do these things.
And you can be spiritual without the ritual of a specific religion.
Yeah, because I'm very spiritual, like that's for sure.
That's why I know why we've been trained to believe that some things have to be a certain way. But the reality is that even people who don't consider themselves spiritual usually have a code of ethics. And if you look at their code of ethics, it's usually the same basis of our spirituality. So across the biggest religions, right? So it's very interesting to me how people have all these preconceived notions of the paths that people have to follow to be able to put them into nice boxes that can give you a nice category so you can organize everything. But newsflash, life is disorganized, life is messy, and some of us will never fit into a box.
And though some of us don't want to fit into a box.
Oh, I stopped wanting to be fit in, like I don't want to be defined by a box. Or
No.
sometimes I do want to be in a box, but a box that I built myself on my own terms.
Exactly, in my own turf.
So it's funny, but during your teenage years, you always want to fit in.
Yeah.
And I was never able to do that.
Me neither.
So again,
me
I
neither.
don't know what that feels like, right?
I
But on
moved
the
around
other
a whole
hand,
lot as well, so I was always, I felt like a different person, and I always say it. I was always trying to make someone else happy, so that was my own personal like journey of growth, of course. But other than that, it's like I can't fit in. There's a reason for that, you know. And no matter, it depends on generation talking, of course. I mean, if people who are younger than me would be like, oh, that's fine, but like I have pink hair, and tomorrow I might have purple. I don't know. I have a bunch of tattoos. That's how I look, basically. That's how I have fun doing it. And I have a lot of people who are like, well, you know, that's not professional. Like, how are you going to get into, you know, like all these sorts of like set boxes? And I'm like, just because I have tattoos. First of all, most of my tattoos are Disney tattoos, so I think that says a lot. And second of all, it's just pink hair. It's not like, I mean, there's no color that's bad. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you talking about?
and if it makes you happy, it's fine.
There you go. I mean,
But
I think that's the most important thing.
and even Disney relaxed its rules for its employees, which was in the news this past week. So
Oh my goodness. That
so
was one of the
again,
questions about Disney, actually, because I know
evolution.
you're a huge Disney lover and I am too.
Yeah, I'm a huge Disney fan. Huge, huge, huge. It makes me happy every time I go there.
It makes me really happy. I haven't gone in years, obviously, since I was a kid, actually, in this particular case, because I mean, I lived in Europe, so, and we came back and here we are. Um, but yeah, no, Disney for me is that magic, is keeping that spark alive, is to keep that inner child glowing. And there's a lot of stuff what you were talking about. You remind me of the movie, two movies, Inside Out, obviously, about like feeling your feelings and it's okay to be sad and all these sorts of things. And Soul. Have you seen Soul?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned those two because those are the two movies that I told my son to watch while he was in isolation.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
You forgot Coco, which is
Yeah,
my other. It's
Coco.
like the
My
Pixar
top
triumph
five,
for
and
me.
Yeah, Coco's in my top five. I mean, I'm not saying Soul
So
Inside Out isn't, but Moana, I have a huge tattoo of Moana. Like when she touches the ocean when she's like a 2-year-old or like one like a little toddler, because
yeah.
the sea is like my place without a doubt. And that movie, it's just it means a lot to me, Moana, of like falling
I
that
love that
knowing
movie
your
too,
worth.
especially the connection with her grandma.
Yeah.
So
Hence why Coco is also like
exactly.
Coco. Those are like the
That's
top
I get
movies.
very emotional, but yeah. So I actually watched at a moment in which I was struggling with different things offline and the whole sense of purpose, right? And questioning why we do the things that we do and how we confuse things and how disconnected souls are the ones who are lost. There were so many things in Soul that resonated with me, and I'm so happy that they won at least an Oscar. Well, they won two for the original score and as best animated film, but so deserved. And
Very,
Inside
very well
Out,
deserved.
Inside Out is such a deep movie. I I was fortunate enough to interview Pete Docter a few years ago, and the whole process of how they approached how to make something so difficult and complicated and make it so simple and appealing for different ages. I think it's a true masterpiece, and it's so approachable even for kids who have issues dealing with emotions, even kids on the spectrum, on identifying what they're feeling, so that way they can process things better. And those are just beautiful, beautiful movies. So
Right?
I get very emotional when I think about them, because for me they're not just animated films. They're such deep reflections, and I don't know, they examine our essence in many ways. And I feel that's why they're so successful and what sets apart Pixar from other studios. They're really looking inside of us
Yeah,
to figure
inward.
out what connects us and what makes us human. And they always want you to feel something. And in a world that sometimes doesn't value feelings, I feel that is tremendous, and it's very brave too.
It really is. Just everything about it. Those movies in particular. Um what I love about it is it's also made for adults, and it
Yeah.
gives you like that spark of like you're watching an animated film. So it doesn't
Spark,
have to be,
soul
yeah,
reference.
exactly. You don't have to watch like, could Soul have been like not animated for adults? Of course it could have been, but this way you have that spark once again, but with that depth of like that meaning of what is life, and like we were saying. And I think Soul is definitely going to be one of my top five. It's kind of hard because there's so many that are so good. And we watched it as soon as it came out, thankfully, and we were waiting a little bit more to like we took it all in. We did some journaling after that. My husband and me, we do a lot of therapy together. We grow a lot and whatnot. So we're like, we give it a few months. So by now we're probably going to start seeing it again, and we see so many different references like in our daily life as well. So like that, and then Inside Out, of course, as well. And Coco is just, I've seen that movie a bunch of times as well, because how can you not? And like in
And
the
I
car
cry
with
every single time.
every single time, and in the car, like just for the heck of it, we put Disney music on, without kids, of course, but Coco, it's like you just feel it, like recuérdame, it's like just singing on top of your lungs. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But it's beautiful because if you realize, again, going back to feeling is what makes us human and connects us, right? And when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, even with strangers, it goes back to your purpose of making people not feel alone, which is also something that has always driven what I do, because we feel very lonely sometimes in rooms full of people, right? But there's always somebody who can understand your struggle, and somebody who has maybe succeeded at defeating those challenges and those ugly and dark moments. And when we share those dark moments, we're actually giving hope to somebody else.
That's exactly it. I mean, the whole reason of starting was that, I felt very alone all my life, and then I was like, nah, there's too many people in this world to feel alone, and like just help others to make sure that there is a brighter side. There always is. Just
And that
keep
we can
going.
always connect, whether it's via food, or not everything has to be so deep.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
we love Disney. Both of us love Disney. I also love Nutella. I love eating. I love food in general. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Of course
But I
not.
connect more with people who enjoy food, right?
Definitely. I mean,
We
you live in a really good place that has a lot of different foods, and I miss that. Barcelona had that. I lived in Barcelona for many years, and like,
Barcelona, oh my goodness,
have you
that's
visited?
like, yes, we were very lucky. We were there 2 years ago. It
Oh
was
wow.
spectacular,
I think we were
spectacular.
there maybe at the same time, depending on what 2 years ago, what time of year 2 years ago that you
It was
went.
summer of
2019.
20.
I have just moved here at some point of summer. So we might have just crossed paths. Who knows? Plus, I did go to Miami, like I told you. We spent a couple of weeks there because my brother lives in my brother and my sister-in-law, who's also Chilean, like I told you, lives
Yeah.
there. And yeah, no, Barcelona, like of course, multiculturalism, and you can eat and everything. I miss that. Like now that we, not that we're eating out of restaurants inside, but now that summer basically is here, we can eat outside or we can like just get the food and see maybe in our car, but like it's better weather up here in Massachusetts, and it's like, okay, give me different foods. So yes, I understand you when it comes to food. So I just like, you made my mouth water because I know Miami so well. It's like, oh my God, I miss the
Yeah, the food
variety
here
of
is
food.
really good
Yes.
because there's diversity. Like
Exactly.
you
That's why.
can eat Venezuelan arepas and you can have Peruvian ceviche and you can have Argentinian steak and Japanese and Italian and I absolutely love that.
Yes. That's why my husband, like I told you, my husband fell in love with it because he's like, and he loves food and he loves the good weather. So he's like, this is the place to be. Like, because you literally have everything you can think of. So,
Well, we'll be waiting for you guys here in South Florida
oh my God,
and
yes.
anybody who wants to visit.
Right? Like, so exciting. Still have like a million more questions. I know we've been talking a whole bunch, so I'm gonna semi try to wrap it up. But going more into that, deeper side of Latinx in society, actually in this case. So like this Latinx in society in USA, what is one of the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of like us, basically?
Diversity. A lot of people see us as just that text, right? Like Latinx or Hispanic, and they have this vision of how we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to like, what we're supposed to sound like. And for me, we are so not like that. We are so diverse, but our culture brings us together. So even though we might be very different, we have that connection. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the language because a lot of people say, well, those who speak Spanish or whatever. I'm like, no, there's so many Latinos, Latinas, Latinx that don't speak Spanish, never learned it. But come on, like you can tell their love for the culture, how connected we are, the way that we approach things, the way that we can relate to certain things, like something as stupid as opening a margarine tub and finding stuff there instead of margarine, right? Or opening the cookie tins, the butter cookie tins, and finding, I don't know, threads and needles.
Exactly.
I mean, I think we all grew up in homes in which we would, like our moms or our grandmoms would recycle everything. They would save everything and find purpose and be so resourceful, and how food connects us and how it's a family event to have a meal together, to celebrate a birthday, to celebrate life. That's something that transcends whether you have brown eyes, blue eyes, whether you have a Mexican, Venezuelan, Chilean, Argentinian accent, whether you believe in one thing or the other. I think we're all connected by that. And I love that. I love that because you can feel at home with any Latinx that you encounter, right? It's very interesting, regardless of where you were born, where your parents were born, and whether you learned English, Spanish, Spanglish, or whatever
Exactly.
language.
It's
So
always
it's fascinating though, because I do a lot of education with brands and with marketers and sometimes with companies, and trying to explain that, like, depending on who you want to reach, which demographic inside of the Hispanic community, then you have to refine certain things with language and stuff. But if not, you have to appeal to what brings us together and not get so lost in the details of the kind of Spanish. So I always recommend that we use a more neutral approach to Spanish. But in some parts of the country, obviously it's Mexican Spanish that dominates. Or in Miami, it used to be Cuban Spanish and Spanglish, and now it's more Venezuelan, right, due to the most recent immigration. So you just have to have an open mind and embrace that diversity and teach others who might have not been exposed to Latinos or Latinas or Latinx people in their lives. Teach them. I think sometimes right now we are very aggressive in the sense that, yes, there are a lot of microaggressions going on. There's a lot of racism going on, but sometimes I prefer to approach it with a lens that it's just ignorance. And if we are willing to give that person the benefit of the doubt and teach them that their preconceived notions are wrong, and teach them like the beauty of diversity, I've had amazing results. I'm a firm believer that instead of taking a very aggressive stance that you should know better, you're being very racist, sometimes if you approach it with kindness and from the lens of, hey, maybe they don't know better. Maybe they haven't ever met somebody that is Latino, but is really like no different from them in values, in customs, and in our humanity. We're all part of the human race. But when people see you as different because they haven't known anybody different from them, give them the benefit of the doubt instead of trying immediately like to change them and to chastise them for not knowing better when honestly they didn't really have the exposure to anything different.
You left me speechless because I agree. Basically, I love that beautiful speech of yours right now because, like you said, it was the first word you said was diversity, and then just walking through every single step and definition of just being more, to be kinder. I feel like the world is, people need to be kinder, and the moment you start being kinder, even if it's not, even if it's just, I mean, you start being kinder to the grocer, you start being kinder to the mailman, and so on and so forth, and it's going to become that impact, of course. And like what you were saying, when it comes to different cultures coming together and like not understanding, it's like, well, you have to come and teach them and not like think like, oh my god, it's my job to teach them. And that's no, like you said, maybe they've never seen someone or they've never encountered that. It's like, okay, and just take it from there, because it's just it's the best way. If not, it's going to be aggressive on aggressive, or it's going to be certain circumstances that, you know, there's no need. There's enough already in the world.
There's enough aggression, there's enough violence, there's enough intolerance, and just be very cognizant that it might not be your job to educate others, right? They should be mature enough or smart enough to search up the information. But you know what? Sometimes the outcome is so much better when you do take the time to do that. I'm not saying that you always have to be in this teacher role.
Exactly.
You can really change perceptions that way, and you can help improve the world that we're living in.
Completely agree. Goodness. To definitely wrap things up, we're almost there basically. One of the best questions I really wanted to ask you actually is, what is one of your most meaningful traditions from both cultures that you carry on with your family? Well, both and like three, I guess, because you have Chile, you have USA, you have Peru with your husband, of course.
And also from our religion, because
Yeah, that's
being
also
Jewish
true. Of
always is
course.
huge on tradition. Well, the first thing is that Spanish has been spoken at home. And I know it's not a tradition, but I love that my kids can swear in Peruvian and Chilean Spanish. I think it makes it very unique because that way, whenever you visit family, you know how to connect with people who are living in Chile and in Peru. So I think language is definitely key. We try to always have dinner together, and that's very common in Latino households. I hadn't even realized how uncommon it was in other families until I started also educating myself on the diversity inside of the United States. But for us, that is very important. Sharing meals, as ridiculous as it might sound. The other thing, that music is huge, huge in our family in Spanish, even though obviously the kids are going to listen to whatever is playing on Pandora, Spotify, or Apple Music these days, not on the radio because kids still listen to the radio. But it's so interesting for me. And the other traditions that we have is, and this is one that I started during the pandemic. I started baking bread, baking challah bread on Fridays, which is it's been done for thousands of years in the Jewish tradition. But that braided bread actually for me was therapeutic. I love baking and I love food, as I shared with you. I love carbs. So I found and fine-tuned this recipe that I love, and I added cinnamon to it. So Friday night challah, freshly baked, is my new favorite tradition, and my kids love it too. I've even shipped cinnamon challah to my son in Chicago, so it's been really, really
Aww.
interesting. So I love that. I love that.
That's beautiful. I love the simplicity behind those traditions, because it might not be something super specific, even though the bride was, of course. But the sitting down to eat at the dinner table and the music is so utterly important, also to me. Um, I grew up with many different roommates in a very chaotic life. Even to this day, it's always very touch and go kind of feel. So whenever we do move finally, to our house sometime soon this year, we're excited to have those meals. We're excited to like, and I told him like it's so utterly important. He didn't grow up that way either. And I'm like, not that I did all my life because my parents got separated when I was quite young, but there's something about it that I know it's so important to sit down at the table and just like talk. And we love to talk. Like that's our number one thing. Next comes adventuring, I guess, and third comes reading. I don't know. But we do love to talk, so it's nothing like it's not super difficult to us to, not be there with with a TV on or something like that. So I definitely understand where you're coming from that. And then it's something that we want to establish. So when we do have kids, it's kind of like this is what we do every day at X time, whenever the schedule says so, then there you go. And music, I think music.
Music is key.
Yeah. Music gives us life for both of us. And he loves Latin music. I'm still loving Latin music since as long as I can remember. And that's something that I want like super present in my life all times. So yeah, I understand. It's simplicity of the things, but they're so important in the big aspect and the big picture.
Yeah,
Without a doubt.
that and food.
Yes. Well, yes. That my husband could definitely agree with you a lot more. Not that I do not love food, believe me, but he's definitely a foodie, like 110%. I'm
Yeah,
learning into it.
no.
I'm learning what it is like, because just a very wild life I fled, basically. Always survival mode. So for me, it was kind of like I need to get what I need to get, and that's it. But now I'm like starting to actually enjoy. So it's different. All
Which is
right.
very good.
It is. Right? I come a long way. I think we all have, hence the word evolution.
Exactly. The beauty of
Um,
evolution.
yep, it's definitely this. So to wrap things up on this episode, I always ask the same three questions for everyone, and you're definitely going to have them. The first is three words to describe you.
Kind, hardworking, and optimistic.
Oh, I love those words. I can definitely see you reflected in those words.
That's always hard for me. Like I've had that question in job interviews, and I never know what to answer.
You took a nice long pause there. I was like, no, no team flyer. We're still on air. Is this you just thinking? It catches some people off guard, much like today. It catches people. Some people know. I'm always fascinated about the answers. Um, some people even say like their country where they're from, to like because that's a big part for them. It really, really varies. I love it because it's time. Because I don't take my wins ser- no, no, I don't take my wins seriously. That's not the point. I don't celebrate my wins. I take them seriously because I know they're big wins, but I don't celebrate them, or we don't really go that like introspective, like, oh, I'm kind and loving, and I can't even think of a different one, as you can see. So my intention with the question is kind of like a self reminder of like, hey, this is who you are, this is who you choose to be. Could tomorrow you have a different answer? Probably, who knows, you know? But it's kind of like the little introspective of like, this is who you feel like you are today, and that's actually something really beautiful about that.
That's really cool. And now I started thinking about other answers, but
See,
much is
any other
wonderful.
word you want to add really quickly?
A mom.
Yep, that's huge. We had you on for Mother's Day, so that's something else that we adored. Super special, and you being a mom. Oh my God, I'm just getting all sorts of emotional again. I know myself. Second to last, what are you grateful for?
Every single breath that I take.
Yep. Yep.
I am.
I think
Now more than ever.
yep, now more than ever. And we hope that feeling stays. That, you know, every day is magical and important no matter what. Yeah, being
And
thankful for me is super important, as well as my team flyer knows, my friends know it's like my middle name. Like I can just easily, like, I text my friends randomly, so what are you grateful for today? And they're like, this, and this, and this. Because it's
but
just, it's
every
so
single
important.
day, for me also, what is huge for me, it was very difficult to be able to be a mom. So I'm grateful every single second for my kids.
I can tell. You can just feel it. You can feel it in the air. That face of yours, my gosh, I just want to go hug you. And last and definitely not least, of course, where can we find you, my love?
You
See?
can find me all over the internet. I'm at Jeannette Kaplun across social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. My blog is hispanaglobal.net in English, hispanaglobal.com en español. And I also have a YouTube channel for Hispana Global. There is a Facebook page that's 87,000 women strong, and
That's
JeannetteKaplun.com as well. So there's a variety of places where you can find me depending on what your mood is like.
exactly, depending what kind of information or resources you need.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll definitely tag you down below, like I always do, of course. But yeah, Jeannette Kaplun, which is your name, so it's
Yeah,
pretty
because my
easy and
name is really
straightforward.
complicated. It's really complicated. So even if you heard it, I know it's a mouthful. So
Well, it's kind of like mine. Every time I have to say mine, and
Ariadna.
Ariadna, in my last name Arredondo. So like
Right.
you, because you know Spanish, you're like, oh, Ariadna Arredondo, okay. But if you don't, then you're like, Ariadna, what? Say that again. So
Yeah.
I understand. I have to like write it down, and depending on what I do in the daily life, I'm like, it's okay. I love my name though. It's very unique. Um,
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being with us, for chilling with us, for being as honest and as pure as you are.
Oh, thank you. That is so
I
beautiful. Thank you so much for inviting me, for having me, and for bearing with me.
anytime. Oh my God, it's so easy and so laid back, and I love it. I had a bunch of other questions to touch into, but we could be talking for hours because we just vibe that way. So that's for sure. And yeah, definitely. As for the rest of Team Flyer, I mean, we're here every Wednesday. Our season is almost done by now. Um, Very grateful that you're here. Very grateful that I talked to Jeannette today as our lovely special guest. And stay tuned for more. Have a beautiful day. Bye, Team Flyer.
Bye.